lunch or afternoon tea or morning tea, wherever you are, midnight snack, enjoyed their break. Thanks for joining us back again. Now we have a special guest, Maria Firkin from Singapore, all the way from Singapore. Welcome, Maria, to the TPR conference, and say to the show. It is kind of a bit of a show, but it's live. I'll just share a little bit about Maria. Maria is a senior business leader with global experience in driving sustainable change and managing complex programs across diverse industries. She's held leadership positions in KPMG, large multinational corporations and startups. Maria has extensive experience in establishing, resetting and leading PMOs in challenging regulatory contexts at the local, corporate and international levels. Currently, she's driving strategic transformation initiatives for the leading Asia-based asset manager, Eastspring Investments. Welcome, Maria. Thank you so much for joining us. Over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks very much. So thank you for joining this presentation today, and I hope that you're enjoying the conference. And there's a little bit of background about what I've done and the type of programs and PMOs that I've established and set up both in banking and other areas. And one of the key things that I've learned across my time, both in driving organizational change, setting up program offices, leading portfolios, etc., is one of the key elements of being able to be effective is to be able to drive effective decision making. And effective decision making is often overlooked as one of the key factors that can enable us to deliver success for both ourselves personally and our positions in leadership and driving PMOs, driving governance, setting up planning, but also in our organizational success. So I'm going to tell you why this is so important, and I'm going to start to run the presentation now. Actually need to move the screen, apologies.
No, to let you know when we can see it. We're just looking at the PMO leader screen at the moment.
Can you see it now?
Not yet. We might just need to change the view or the screen. We're just looking at the conference page.
Okay, let me try that one again then.
No problem.
Right, can you see it now?
Not yet. We're just on still on your internet homepage. Just while Marie gets the presentation up, if you've got questions throughout the session, please put it into the Q&A and feel free to join along in the chat as well.
Have you got it now?
Not loaded yet. Give it a sec. I've also got a copy if you need us to bring it up. We can do that for you too. Apologies, guys. It won't be a moment.
So it's not showing now either?
Not just yet. No, not just yet. Would you like me to bring up the slides for you on our side?
No, but if I go, sorry guys. So if I go to share screen.
Yep, present to audience. There's a little button on the bottom of the webinar. It says present to audience with a little arrow. If you press that and then choose the screen that you want to share.
So I go entire screen or window, right? AirMeet.
Yes, correct. So if you can do window if you're in presentation mode, or entire screen, and just pick the screen that has the presentation.
I don't know
entire
why
screen.
picking it. Can you see the screen now?
No, unfortunately not yet. Do you want me to share the slides you shared earlier, and you can have your notes on your side visible, and we'll share the slides, or would that be okay?
No.
No, different? Okay, no problem. Cool, no problems. Apologies. Thanks for your patience, everyone.
It just kind of should just go up to the window or whatever that's there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, definitely. And you've pressed the present to audience button that's already been pressed on your side, because it doesn't look like you're
the little squared out present to audience. Yep.
Yeah.
So I come up, I go share screen. I've tried window.
Yep.
And that does, if I go window.
There we go. Something's loading. Yeah, it's share. So it's just sharing the webinar. So maybe if you can move your slides into that screen, perhaps that might work.
Can you see that?
We can just see the webinar conference page at the moment. Mary, do you want to, if you want to email me the slide, I can pull up your newer slides on our side if that helps.
Yeah, I did present them just before. Can you see it now?
Not yet.
I'm on share entire screen, and it says the entire screen has got my presentation up on it from my view, and I'm on share mode.
Not at the moment. It's not showing that, unfortunately.
Okay, all right. I just emailed you the latest version, so if you wouldn't mind bringing that up. Sorry, everyone.
No problem. No problem. I'll just load that. Just give me 1 second. Feel free to, if you'd like, while I bring it up, just to give an overview of what you're going to cover today, and then we'll get straight into it.
Okay. Okay, so in today's session, I'm going to cover why decision making is so important. And particularly now we have such an explosion of tools and technology available to us. And in some cases, it's quite difficult to actually wade through the amount of technology that's available to be able to sound intelligent about decision intelligence, and then how to apply and leverage it so that we can be better at our jobs and more effective. So why is decision making so important? So there's some facts and figures about decision making that you may already be aware of. And if you're not, just want to highlight a few of those points to you. So there's a very well published or well spoken about McKinsey study that says that the cost of decision making, or the cost of a bad decision, is around 170 million. Of course, that applies to big corporates, but if you apply that to any organization, the extent of a bad decision is quite extensive. In that same study, they also talk about 55% of decisions are still made through intuition and gut feel, etc., even with the amount of resources that we do have available to us to make decisions. Another study by the Harvard Business Review said that the average decision-making process takes 9 to 12 weeks in corporates. As a project professional, we usually don't have the time for 9 to 12 weeks to make a decision. And it's very important that we're able to fast track or facilitate effective decisioning. The same study said that about 70% of those decisions are made around that can be wrong, and are also made around gut feel and not scientifically. Of the decisions that are made, about 10% of those decisions are never revisited. And the cost of a bad decision can be about 10%, can actually be 10 times greater than the cost of a good decision. So with all those facts and figures by well-esteemed management leadership organizations, we can think about how is that important to us. We know that decision making and time is very important to us, and that the cost of a poor decision and decisions never being reworked leads to ineffective delivery of transformation programs. Have you got the presentation there ready to?
No, nothing's come up yet, Maria, but I do have the old ones if that's helpful at all, but no emails come through just yet.
Can you see it now?
We can. Amazing. Thank you. We'll leave you to it.
Okay. Right. So there we are. Here's the, these are about the facts and figures that we just discussed. Okay. So in all of that, what could possibly go wrong? And here is the story of BlackBerry. And a great example of how decision-making went wrong, and reminders of why decision-making and management is so important, even in the exciting days of building a startup and the messy days of dealing with regulators and investors. If you've not yet seen the movie, I'm sure you know the story of one of the greatest startups of all time and the greatest dives of all time, being BlackBerry. On the right, you have Jim Basile, and on the left, you have Mike Lazaridis and their famous history of their dazzling startup. Decisions were made with no appropriate approval or record keeping. In BlackBerry's case, this was the offering of backdated share options. And then they were unable to make effective decisions about the future with the emergence of innovative new technologies such as touchscreens by Apple, confirmation bias, and overconfidence bias, along with groupthink, dominated and paved the way for BlackBerry's descent. Don't let your projects and programs be BlackBerry. You can have clear decision-making processes with transparent decision logs, with the right people engaged. You can use methods to reduce biases, such as the biases that dominated the course of BlackBerry's demise. Of course, things change, and you need to have a process that can facilitate conversations and drive analysis with all the necessary stakeholders involved. This can be really challenging as a project professional, both in PMO, project managers, etc. So how can we make this happen? So the first things that we need to do, there's a few key steps, but the first thing we need to do is we need to understand what effective decision-making is. We need to look out for what holds us back, such as the biases, the lack of accountability and indecision. We need to leverage the powerful decision-making models that are available to us, and we need to adopt the latest in decision-making technology to make life easier for you, while improving your personal success and the success of your programs. So critical to the success of any project and to project professionals that lead, deliver, and govern projects, programs, and portfolios are efficiently made sound decisions. Because decision-making is a process, it's not an event. And successful projects, or any project, is the sum of those decisions made, how quickly, the quality of the decision, and the ability to rework a decision once new opportunities and challenges come to life. These are steps to bring together the effective decision-making for your program officers and project officers. So how do we make it happen? What is effective decision making in the world of project management? Well, it's herding cats for one thing. And I think we all know about how difficult it is to drive effective time-bound decisions. The other is that the very foundation upon which any project is based and will be delivered are decisions. The very notion that your project or your program or portfolio came into being is on a collection of decisions, starting with strategy, going through to investment that's been given and allocated and assigned to a project, through to the professionals like yourselves who plan and deliver and manage the successful outcomes of that investment. That means that successfully delivering your project, whether it's building a new highway, building a building, making a data mart, developing a software solution, or developing a target operating model, effective decision making is the ability to be able to to be able to create that and deliver that by making informed choices that positively impact the project's outcome and stakeholder satisfaction. It involves a systematic approach to evaluating options, assessing risks. As project professionals, we are very experienced at assessing risks and the benefits and selecting the best course of action. And in your role, sometimes it's guiding you're not necessarily the decision maker, but you need to facilitate the process and guide towards the right outcomes in a time-bound way to keep it all on track. So let's visualize the decision-making type and the frequency. So we started talking about the inception of a project, and let's have a look at how that all fits together at a kind of a macro level. At the top, we have strategic decisions. These are made infrequently. They're linked to strategy. We might want to build a new data mart as to deliver part of our strategy to be more competitive, and therefore we make that decision. We make a decision to give money to a portfolio, which then makes decisions about how that will be carved up and divided into programs and projects, or projects under programs. And then we develop products, we develop target operating models, and then we have the tactical decisions that we make every day in terms of project stand-ups, etc., in terms of perhaps product features or little trade-offs or who we should communicate with, etc. At those frequently made decisions that are made every day, we've got lots of tools at our disposal to help us with that. We have Jira, for example, for product management and development. We've got other tools in terms of how we manage our communication and our frequency. But where the bottleneck is as we go between the strategy through to those daily decisions that are made. And we know as we drive decisions, most commonly around change requests, or around other strategic decisions that need to be made in the project arena, that's where it gets caught. So that's in that middle bit where it becomes between the triangles of where we have the impact of the decision versus the frequency of decision, we get stuck in that area. But let's break that down a little bit. Okay, so that's the whole area of how decision-making works at an organizational level or at a macro level, etc. But really, all of that is the sum of loads and loads and loads of decisions, the decision-making process. And too often, as I said before, we focus on the event. So let's unpack it. It is probably one of the most underestimated processes in an organization, yet possibly the most important. If you think about how much time is spent on redesigning and reorganizing various processes and automating and all that type of thing, this one, which is applicable to pretty much every facet of everything we do within business, certainly within project management, etc., and running PMOs, is really not given the attention and priority that it needs. It's mostly recorded as a log, as an event, and hopefully effectively, because certainly if you've been in the position where you have to stand up to regulators and justify what decision was made, by whom, when, and why, hopefully the logs of decisions are very good. But it's actually also the process that's really important. Who was engaged, how long it took, etc. How long it took, obviously very important for us because, time is money. And then who was engaged and how that happened and the behaviours around that. It's really hard for us to be able to manage the behaviours of individuals that we want to make accountable and to participate in the decision-making process. So these are some of the key steps in decision-making, which you all kind of know, but we need to manage very well. We need to define the decision very, very well. We need to pull on the best resources to be able to define the decision, how we will do the analysis. So AI is actually becoming very helpful to us to be able to help us frame and gather information. We need to scope it, we need to assign roles. This is where the decision-making models, such as you're probably all using RACI or RAPID, there are other newer ones around there, such as January's decision-making model, etc., that help drive, so everyone knows what their role is and what they need to do. They don't necessarily all do it though, do they? So we need to drive accountability for that, with the data and analysis that underpins an effective decision. So our decisions don't become like another statistic, like in the Harvard Business Review or McKinsey reports that say, well, most of them are made on gut reaction anyway. And then we have to review and decide and do it in a way that is collaborative and cohesive. And of course, then we all go off and implement it and we govern it. And then we deal with the decisions that come up again and again and again. So it's really important that we run a retrospective. Very popular, particularly in agile management, is very systematically driving retrospectives into the way that we do, into the way that we deliver. But do we execute that right through the decision-making hierarchy? This is just an example. I'm not going to read through all this. This is just an example of the web of decisions that I just spoke about. So should we invest in a new technology platform? Yeah, okay, so the leadership executive team decides yes, and gives a bucket of money to it. Then, of course, we have sets and sets of decisions that come out of that. Strategic decisions, which platform, which countries, that type of thing. Technical decisions around partners and how and what and architecture. We have operational decisions. Who's responsible? How does this impact the operations? What operational platform do we use? Who will maintain it? Financial decisions, budget, how much this year, how much next year, what bucket, how much do we spend on on the technology, how much do we spend on the people? People decisions, who should we engage? Shall we outsource it? Shall we get consultants in? Who do we hire? What mix do we need to have? It's just an example of how, from the triangles that I presented before, sort of how that might interplay to consolidate that thinking. But the only decision that you can't recover from is no decision. And I'm sure many of you I'm sure all of you have experienced this at some time, if not frequently. Okay, as Anthony Robbins rightly sort of points out here. So as we know, time ticks on. Our projects fall behind, and we're going back to our forums and we're quantifying these decisions aren't made, and yet we are burning valuable resources and the investment in our projects and programs. And as PMOs, we have to then communicate that as well and articulate that in such a way that makes sense, that is transparent. We also then have to deal with people becoming frustrated. We have frustrated stakeholders, we have frustrated teams because we can't get the decisions made that need to at least move forward. It's really important if we have a mechanism where we actually, sometimes we make a decision, it's not the right decision, but we don't want to be in that percentage of decisions that are never revisited either. If we provide a mechanism where we can really easily capture project decisions and then being able to revisit and update them, then that is a really great outcome also. Just like when you're doing in an agile delivery, for example, where you're doing some product development and a stand-up, you put a feature in, it doesn't quite work the way you meant it to go, so you just come back and revisit that and tweak that. Sometimes, however, that becomes a lot bigger, and you realize that there's an issue with the platform or in other, it's not just all about software development, is it? It's about organizational design, it's about building buildings, it's about creating highways, etc. We know as we come to execute, there's a lot of decisions that need to be reworked along the way and need to be driven up and down into different levels or in different forums for decisions, such as architectural review boards or whatever governance forums that we might have. But stuck and indecision is the worst because we can't move forward. Okay, so now this is a really busy slide, and I'm not sure whether you can even read it on your screens, but I just wanted to put this here, and maybe you can revisit this later. And I know that you probably know a bit or maybe a lot about biases, but it's really important to understand how biases work, and for you as an intelligent project professional to intelligently understand how people are behaving, and therefore how you can facilitate and drive decisions. So let's circle back to the BlackBerry example. I mentioned just some of the biases before. Decision-making biases, they're systematic errors in the thinking that can lead to poor decisions and outcomes. So, for example, in the BlackBerry situation, we had confirmation bias, where people were looking for answers that they thought they already had. So the little click screens, that's what's right. It's what everyone wants, right? We had groupthink, where people were collectively making decisions because that's what they wanted. And we certainly had overconfidence bias. They've been so successful that they thought that they could just carry on in the way that they did. So if you take a look and understand the different biases that are available, or the different biases, and you can look at the different ways to overcome that with the people that you're trying to facilitate decisions with, to get your programs and projects, etc., to move forward as PMO experts. Very important. Okay, so how does technology help us? So I love this slide. And one of the reasons why I love this slide is because it speaks to us on 3 different levels. Oh, I love this cartoon, I should say. So it's not just about having more options, such as a scissor and paper, as well as rock, or was it introducing the rock? It's not about understanding more biases, because it still led to the same outcome. It's also relevant because technology has created more options. We've got to be careful about the biases inherent in technology. There's a whole world of discussion on that. But we need to consider the interplay of how technology and decision making come together. And I think that it's a really fascinating history to unpack and to understand as we look at how we can apply it and how we can be leaders in decision-making technology and influence the outcomes of the PMOs and projects, etc., that we're involved in. So, you might have to pair and have a look at this one, but over the last half a century, we have basically had an explosion in decision-making capability. So first of all, in the 1950s, we were making decisions largely on intuition. There was a lot of work in psychology around biases and understanding behavioral, what's happening behaviorally, etc. And people could adopt that into their management styles and the way that they did everything. Computers and mainframes then came around in the 1960s, and it enabled more complex data processing. But that wasn't really available to the general public like us, kind of thing. But this was the basis of what started to happen to be able to frame decision making. Then, in the 1970s, we had the emergence of decision support systems based on mainframe, etc. And then we had the emergence of personal computing. Okay, so what this meant is that we started to be able to incorporate risk analysis. Behavioral economics started to become a thing because we had larger data to analyze, and we also combining that with the traditional psychological decision-making models, etc. Take on the 1980s, now we get LANs, and then we get the introduction of GUIs, and we get enhanced data sharing, and we get user friendliness. So therefore, we can progress and we can start to look at the way even the type of decisions we're making change. Bring on the 1990s, we had the World Wide Web. We had the emergence of the Internet of Everything, and we have data mining starting. And that makes a huge difference because we have access to data, we have the growth of analytics, we have the growth of communication, and both in and out with regard to information. Okay, and then we pile on the 2000s, and we've got cloud computing and we've got mobile devices. So from the 2020s, we can get predictive analytics to drive traction, to be able to make decisions. We do know that there's biases in predictive analytics, and a lot of that stuff wasn't necessarily available to us when we make decisions, but certainly from a strategic level and why a program might have come into inception, etc. All that started to play into even the way why we exist today, being PMOs or running projects, etc. stems from all those decisions. So then we have a look at the, so then we come to the 2020s, and we have machine learning, we have artificial intelligence, and of course this year we have generative artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence has been around for a long time, but we have generative artificial intelligence with the with of course ChatGPT and Bard and all the other models. We also have great collaborative tools. The pandemic era drove the sophistication of that technology and the adoption. I don't need to talk to you all about that, but that meant that bringing that together, we have an explosion of decision-making capability, which is also almost so big. You know, how do we actually even apply that to what we do today? And the trick is that it's a combination of knowing about it, selecting the right tools, and also keeping great decision-making techniques, processes, and understanding biases in your toolkit. So I'm just going to provide a quick example here of how this is a tool called Janua. It's a decision-making tool of how you can indeed have interactive, dynamic registers. So you can, and these sorts of tools are really easily available, adoptable, they're readily available, easily adoptable, and not very expensive. So you can incorporate workflow, you can do analytics, you can do collaboration, you can reduce biases by using great workflow tools like Janua to be able to drive those decisions. And a little bit about AI, as I mentioned before, in the decision-making process, we have how to frame a decision, how to analyze a decision. And of course, you can reach out and use AI, not to make the decision for you, but you can reach out to AI to be able to provide those that input into, have you got it all covered? What's a better way of framing that decision so the stakeholders can understand what's been asked, and you can drive the right analysis, and you've got your bases covered. So when you facilitate that decision, and of course the other thing is that drawing on AI and of course all the predictive data techniques, etc., you can make that analysis faster, make those decisions quicker, and cause less indecision because it's there. You drive it through workflow with accountability, time-bound accountability, the clock's ticking, you can see where it's stuck, and therefore you can facilitate faster decisions in all levels. You know, in a small project, maybe for a startup, or you might be working for a government, or you might be working for an NGO. It's all really important, and it's very important to be transparent, and it's very important to be time-bound. So then, how does this all help us in our jobs? Because we manage risk a lot as project managers and PMOs, etc. In our world, we manage a lot of risks. There are risks to project delays if we don't get decision making happening effectively or efficiently, or indecision. We have unnecessary resource utilization, as we mentioned before. We have resource burn. We have the fact that decisions don't stick. They have to be reworked. And sometimes, have you ever found that we think that we need to rework a decision because we didn't actually clearly have all those factors that we needed to decide clearly understood by the stakeholders? And sometimes you go back and repeat yourself. I've had that happen a lot. We need to be able to manage the biases and the subjectivity and in an objective way. And this is where the decision-making process is really important. And of course, we need to be able to evidence what we've done, how we've decided it, in so many circumstances, particularly if you're working in government, if you're working in financial services, if you're engineering a building, all those different areas, we need to be able to provide quick access to records of decisions that are made, and not be scrambling around trying to find, okay, what was that decision? What happened? The auditors are coming in. There's a probe. There's an investigation, and that can just waste a lot of time and create a lot of stress. Take the stress out of it. Okay, and as we draw to the end, because I've wasted a bit of time trying to get this up here, sorry guys, I believe that a project professional is a decision-making expert. And by adopting good decision-making models, implementing the best tools, getting your team trained up and aware, there's lots of great training, and managing your decisions, you can become the decision expert. And I'd just like to finish on Tom Peters' famous quote that the key to successful project management is sound decisions. Rightio. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Maria. That was really good. I know we had a little bit of a shaky start, but I think the feedback in the chat has been positive. Everyone really likes your slides and the context and the content of them. So thanks for sharing. I'm glad you didn't spoiler alert the BlackBerry movie. I know we should know what happened for, if we remember that time. And I also really liked your comment around decision making is a process, not an event, which I think a lot of us can actually take away. I do have one question for you though. So, you've talked about the technological advancements and shared that really interesting slide of decisions and technology. But when thinking about sort of any guardrails or recommendations around guardrails that maybe we can consider, is there anything that you can recommend for project and PMO professionals that we need to take into account when looking at using AI in that space?
So firstly, is you need to consider how your organizations allow you to use AI, and of course I think that you would be doing that. And but the most important thing is to look at AI as a tool to get your outcomes. It's not an answer, and you don't want to get your answers from AI. And we all have heard about AI hallucinations, but when you use AI, it can guide you. For example, I write on this stuff, and I look at ChatGPT, I look at Bard, I verify everything on the Google search engine. And you know what that tells me? Is whether my idea is original. And that's really important to me, because I want to know that it's not out there, so that I can, such as my triangles, so that I can create original content as well, and around things. So I think that you use it as a guide, use it as a check, and you need to verify.
Amazing. And, I'm sure others say this as well. My husband always tells me that a project manager's job, and in fact, PMO, is going to be replaced by AI completely. Actually, what's your thoughts on that?
I don't think so, because, and I think particularly for PMOs are the glue that brings everything together. Because you need to think about, as a PMO, you've got planning. The art, I do run big programs, so the art of bringing together many streams of activity, etc. A machine right now, and I don't think this decade's going to take that away. It's different, but also communication and ensuring, crossing those T's and dotting those I's. I actually think it's going to be more important. But this is why I think knowing about technology, etc., is really important. That scientist type of role of being able to guide in terms of those choices. Speak up and be part of that. Don't your job's not going to go away. So it's going to become more important. You'll be more of an expert.
Absolutely. And it gives us an opportunity to reflect on the fact that we always got to be adaptive rather. So we just need to adapt to, the tools and the process and that, technology, as you've sort of pointed out earlier as well. So yeah, it's a good call out. Well, this brings us towards the end of our time with you, unfortunately. I've found this very insightful, and as I can see the other guests that we have here today. Is there any closing thoughts, Maria, that you wanted to leave us with today before we wrap up this session?
So my closing thoughts is that just remember that making and managing decisions are fundamental to our success. Technology is not going to take it away. Technology is going to help us be more efficient and put PMOs into the forefront of the facilitation and the glue of anything that's been managed.
Amazing. Well said. Thank you so much, Maria. We have enjoyed having you here. Hope you have a great rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Okay. Enjoy the rest of it. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Wow, that was very insightful. Thank you again to Maria for that presentation. We are about to move into our next agenda item. So in the next 4 minutes' time, we will be having Soyun Kang all the way from Singapore for the interview discussion I'll be having with her on driving growth and impact, strategies, teams, and mission-driven leadership in building scalable communities. Soyun is the Managing Director for Asia Pacific PMI. So be sure not to miss that session. We'll see you in 4 minutes' time. Thanks, everyone, for joining us in this one.